Hello, everyone. All right. I want to introduce myself. I am Danielle Jerome. I'm the new Associate Director of Operations and Community Engagement for the Phyllis and Harvey Sandler School of Social Work at Florida Atlantic University. Before we get started, I just wanted to briefly introduce the Robin Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement for those of you who may be joining us for the first time. The Robin Rubin Center is housed in the Sandler School of Social Work within the College of Social Work and Criminal Justice here at Florida Atlantic. The center offers weekly wellness programming free of charge. Students, faculty, staff, friends, and family are all welcome and encouraged to attend all of our events, including meditation every Friday at noon on Zoom, yoga on the second and fourth Mondays of each month, and special monthly workshops like this one. It's never been more important to nurture our physical and mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. We are firm believers that it all starts with giving yourself permission to show up and step forward. So for any first timers in the audience today, I just want to welcome you and everyone that's here. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Marie English Arterberry. So this is Marie. I think you're muted, Marie, if you're talking. Yeah. Marie, oh, there you go. Okay. Marie is a licensed clinical social worker and a dynamic leader with more than 25 years of experience in mental and behavioral health. Marie is also a passionate content creator, presenter, and strong advocate for a holistic approach to mental well-being. She seeks to present in a way that resonates with audiences on a personal level that moves information from inception to adoption. Marie earned her bachelor's degree from Florida Memorial College and holds a master's degree in clinical social work from Barry University. Marie, thank you for being here today, and take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Marie Arterberry, and I am honored. Thank you to Robin and the team for having me to present on behalf of the Institute and the Center. And I'm glad to just be able to spend a few minutes with everyone to talk about balance. I think it's awesome that people have shown up for themselves. As Danelle has said, is that it's an opportunity for us to say, you know what? I need to take a look at including myself into my daily life. And that's really what this balance thing is about, is to make sure that while we're so busy doing all the different things that we do, a lot of times the thing that is most left out is ourselves. And a lot of times we say, I don't want to be selfish. These things are important. And so therefore I will wait. The problem with us being in a situation where we will wait is that we never get to be included in our own lives because there's so many things that are important. And I often say is that if it wasn't important, you wouldn't be considering doing it. So the things that we do are oftentimes important to us for different reasons. But a lot of times we gauge them as more important than self-inclusion. So balance, a lot of that is about being able to do all the things that we think that is important, but also be able to say, what is it that I need? So we say, what is balance and how can I get some? It's awesome that everyone's here to have an opportunity to answer that question for themselves. We'll be looking at some of the things that we've heard. It's just an opportunity for us to kind of ask ourselves, I know this, but when is the last time that I did this? And so when we start talking about what is balance, that's what we want to look at, because oftentimes we are in a situation where multitasking is king, and we now have the ability to do so many more things than we once did. You can currently be at work because you work from home and doing the laundry. You can be away from your home and answer the door. You can be on vacation and communicate through your smartphone or your laptop. And we consider that to be high functioning. But in fact, it's not high functioning if in fact we don't have what we consider to be balance. And so I'd like for us to just kind of spend a few minutes to take a look at that. So I'm going to share my screen. Start this a minute. One second. Sharing. So again, when we look at what is balance and how can I get some? So when we are in a position where we are overdoing it, we are literally multitasking to the point of extreme. What oftentimes happens for us is that we blame ourselves. And what that looks like is somehow I'm doing it wrong. And we feel like this word here, I lack, you can fill in the blank. You lack concentration, you lack the ability to prioritize, whatever those things are, we often tell ourselves something is wrong with me. I am lacking in some ways that I cannot handle all of these tasks at the same time. And that leads us to having certain feelings about it. And we'll look at that. But I'd like for us at the end of this, for us to look at I lack in a different way. I'd like for us to be able to look at I lack as I'm lovable and capable. And that's what this I lack stands for, is that I'm lovable and capable. Because when we start to decide that there's something wrong with us, our confidence wanes. And our ability to do what it is that we're trying to do doesn't happen because we've decided that there's something wrong with me. And that's not the case. It's that we are dealing with a level of imbalance, and we need to be able to identify ways to address that in a way that works for us. The thing that's most harsh about imbalance is that it leads to burning out. And as you see here, there's a forest fire because that burnout affects us in all aspects of our lives. It affects us in our personal life. It affects us in our professional life. And it literally feels like my entire being is just too much. I cannot take another thing. It doesn't matter what anybody asked before. Somebody could simply say, do you want to come to a party with me? And you're like, why are people bothering me? You know, I don't have time for it. I don't have time for anything. Everything seems like too much. And if you're imbalanced and you start to do that without addressing it, you will end up dealing with burnout. Let's look at some of the risk factors for burnout. I'd like you to ask you to raise your hand if you see yourself in any of these areas. Risk factors. So you are more likely to experience burnout if you have one of these things. Anybody willing to admit there's a high workload? Excellent. High workload. The other one is you work in a helping profession. I help people. This is what my job requires me to do. Or maybe you are everything to everyone. Now, the thing about these areas is that they tend to be things that are important to us. We like being able to have a high workload because it challenges us. So I continue to take on new projects because I like being challenged, or things are given to me and I say, you know what, I'll figure it out. The helping profession, I love helping people. It really gives me joy to help others. And then if you're everything to everyone, this tends to be something that is not limited to any one environment. You're probably that person in your personal life, anybody, and in your professional life. This is where you are the go-to person. You can fix it. They bring it to you, you know how to fix it. That is because, hey, you get things done. And like I said, the thing with burnout is that we started out with things that we thought were important. And so that's why we're trying to fit it all in. But these are things that are important to us, but they're also a risk factor for burnout. And we really do have to be careful if you find yourselves in any of these areas. I really need, if I'm not experiencing that, then I really do need to be conscious and aware that that's something that may be possible for me. Let's talk about some of the consequences. Burnout can lead to depression. And it can be situational or it can be clinical. And what that means is that I just don't know why I'm sad, But if you're finding that, you know what, I just don't have energy to do that, it's just anything becomes too much. It could be joy or it could be a task. It just feels like too much and I just can't do it. If you're finding that consistently, then you could be looking at the consequence of burnout related to depression. You find yourself getting sick a lot. You know what? I'm always the one to catch the cold that's going around. Doesn't matter. I always have a sore throat. I always have a headache. You also find this related to body pains, is that, you know what, that old injury that you have starts to ache again. It may be, years ago you had a car accident, or you were, a swimmer or something of that nature. And whatever that injury was starts to become more and more agitated out of nowhere. A lot of times your body is sending you the message that you are, not having balance. Fatigue is that I'm just tired all the time. Like literally I slept, I'm still tired. Let's look at insomnia. That is, I'm extremely tired, but I'm up every 2 hours because I may be thinking about something that I didn't do, thinking about something that's coming up, something that needs to be done. I'm watching television. I'm using substitutes to try to quiet my mind, but it's not working. Sadness, anger, irritability. This is where I don't want anybody to talk to me. Like, don't talk to me about anything. Don't say hello. Just leave me alone. I just want to be left alone. And then I feel sad because I feel lonely. So it's this turmoil that you're feeling when you get to the place of burnout because of this level of imbalance. The other thing is alcohol and substance abuse. Now we've gotten to a place where I'm just trying to be able to get it all done. I just need a break. And so I may decide that, you know what, they, are obviously making wine bottles a little bit smaller than they used to because of COVID, because I don't know how I finished this whole bottle that fast, or I'm just going to have this, pill because it's just going to, take the edge off. These are also something that you want to be aware of. Let's talk about our body a little bit. I don't know if you're aware that type 2 diabetes is directly associated with stress and burnout. And we'll talk about the physical stuff a little bit as well, because blood pressure is a part of that. Remember, our blood pressure is related to constriction. And then we talk about excessive stress. So I want us to take a look at, again, how can we be able to look at those things and what are some of the tools that we could use that, like I said, I remember that, but my question to myself is, when is the last time that I did that? Because what we don't want is for us to be like this, where you just get to a place where I'm just doing, this is as much as I can do to get by, because it's just too much. If you look at this man, he does not look like he's having a good time. And he is doing something, and there's a pile around him and everywhere. Doesn't look like he may have skipped a few times going to the gym because he's so busy. But again, we get to the place where it just all seems like too much. And what happens in that situation is that we continue to try, but we just can't do it. We just end up being still. And that's what we talked about before, is the lacking, is that now I'm starting to judge myself because I'm not able to do what it is that I think is important and needs to be done by me. So we look at what are some of the components, let's move into what are the key components of balance. And we know these things. We need to manage our time. We need to manage our stress. And of course, we need to manage our mood. If we are going to truly seek balance, we have got to take these things seriously. Because again, we look at our time as something that belongs to everything. And everything can't have all of our time because it's just not enough of it. And like I said, we throw the word stress around like, everybody knows the word, everybody uses the word stress. But truly, truly, stress is something that we have to take serious because it affects every part of our lives. So let's talk about what exactly balance looks like. So Successful people, which is what we all want to be, these are the areas that successful people have in their lives. They have all of these components in their lives. They're actively engaged in each one of these areas. So let's talk a little bit about them. Successful people are aware and engaged in their finances and in their career. That means they are taking a look at their finances. They're taking a look at where their money is being spent, and they're looking at how to manage it. You notice that when you get to a place of burnout, this is one of those areas that we kind of just go, oh, I just can't. Our career, successful people are looking at where am I going? How is this position working? What would be my next? What was my last? How do these things go together? So when you need to be able to take a look and be conscious of these things when you're talking about successfully achieving balance. The next one is mental and educational. This is really about creativity. This is about learning. This is about keeping our minds engaged. This is the opportunity for us to be bringing in new information. And ideally, you want to be bringing in things and new information that's interesting, to you. So it's an opportunity for you to be reading, to be able to gain new information, to be able to decide how you're going to use those things. And we all know that our physical and our health are important. But again, this is often one of those areas that gets put on the back burner, and we may not make it to that area. But again, the physical health is so important. We often know the saying that says, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. Nothing else matters. But it's often the thing that we will decide, I'll get to it. Maybe next week, maybe tomorrow, or you know what, that's enough. But it's definitely something that you have to be dealing with. Our social and cultural. This is our values. We have to make sure that we're engaged in the things that we find to be valuable. We have to be able to look at them and consider them, and how will we use them? How will we engage them? A lot of times we put those things on the side because, again, this is about you, and you're living and dealing with everything outside of you. So we're not considering what our social and cultural stuff is. Spiritual, ethical. This is our belief system. It is, what is it that I believe in, and am I engaging in those things? And am I actively looking at what is important to me and my beliefs and those types of things? And the last one we all know too is family and our home. And what that means is these are our roots. This is where I come from. And our home, it's our environment. A lot of times we just go to our home to throw our things down and to pass out. That's pretty much what we're doing there. But really taking an opportunity to take a look at your environment in your home, in your space, to see if it's something that is inclusive of you. Do you have things in your space that are comfortable for you, that feel welcoming to you? Oprah used to say, your space should welcome you, should rise up to greet you. And so taking a look at, does my environment rise up to greet me? This is your safe space. So your safe space, should be inclusive of you. It should not just be a place where you just go to crash and you put yourself all together and pick through all the things, all the clothes and all the things, just so you can go out and look like you're together for everyone else, which is fine. But when you come home, do you have your cozy socks? Do you have your fuzzy blanket? Do you have the aromatherapy? These are the types of things that are important when we start talking about your balance. And successful people are engaging these different areas. And so it's so important for us to be able to look at these 6 areas and see ourselves. I want to be clear about something though. Balance is not about equal. I don't want you to look at those areas and be like, oh, great, I got to have, equal percentage in all of those areas in order to be successful. Not at all. Balance is not about equal, because the truth is you may have to spend 80% of your attention in one of those areas. And that means the rest of them, the other 5 are only going to have to split 20%. And that's okay. So if you look at this little example, is that this still has balance, even though it's not equal. And for us, we need to be aware that, hey, some days, and this can change, balance is something that is personal, because I may need more of one particular area than you do, and I may need more of one particular area at different times. So I may need to spend 80% of my focus on my education. And so the others have to have 20%, but it is about being inclusive of all those areas. So just remember that balance isn't equal, and it changes every day sometimes. And sometimes we can maintain for a semester, for a week, for a project, that we need to have our focus maybe stronger in one particular area. So I don't want you to feel like crap, I don't have all of these things equal. I'm spending all of my time in one area. That's what we're talking about when we talk about your balance being off, is that your entire 100% is spent in these other areas, in this one area, and there's none being allocated to the others. It's okay that if it's only 5% of your 100% is being spent on your physical, your working out, or your socializing with family, is that it's once a month that we go to the movies together. It's okay. But again, being able to make the assessment is truly what success is about. I'm constantly taking a look at these areas and I'm reassessing. Have I taken a look at this particular area? Did I take a look at my finances and my career path? Did I take a look at whether or not I'm engaged in the things that I find to be valuable? Am I engaging in the things that I think are, a part of my ethics? Am I engaging in spirituality? And it doesn't have to be the same for all of us, but do I have that? Do I have that opportunity to stop and say, there is something bigger than me, and I'm so glad for it, because I know I don't have all the answers. So we need to be able to have all of those. But like I said, just remembering that balance is not about equal. Sometimes you're going to need more of something in order to create your balance. So creating our balance is always different and always changing. Now let's look at our time. Can you enter in the chat? What are some of the areas that you spend most of your time on? Just 2 words in the chat. I may spend most of my time, what? Work, school. Let's see what we got here. Where are we spending our time? Where does your time go? So I see people putting in there different things. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, good, good. All right, so we got lots of different things. Our families, our work, school, all of these different things are all competing for our time. And again, these are the things that are super important to us. But we know I can't do everything and call it balance. I can't give everything that's important 100% and still consider myself to have balance. So what if we took a look at our time in a different way and how we allocate it? So let's say we looked at our time like this. How much is your time worth? So if we were to take time and say that it's money, that you get $24 a day. Now, most of us know that you pretty much pay more than that for gas every week. So if we look at the fact that I get 24 hours a day, or I get $24 a day to spend, I get $24 a day, that's not a lot, right? And so we got $24 a day times 30 days. You have $720 a month to spend on everything. You do not get any credit. It is only 24 hours. So you can't borrow against that. There's nothing. You only have $720 or hours a month. That's it to spend on any and everything. Think about that for a minute. $720. Is there any job That you would somebody say, look, we're going to pay you $720 a month, and that's what you're going to need to spend on everything. The question for us is, what would you have to do in order to live off of $720 a month? What would you have to do? I think one of the things we probably have to do is get some roommates, several of them for me, because we all live in South Florida, so I'm going to need a ton of roommates. If I got a car, I'm probably going to start carpooling. I'm definitely not going to be eating out because that's going to be a problem. So what we would probably have to do is look at how it is that we are prioritizing, and we have to start looking at, those are examples of trade-offs. Trade-off says, listen, I'm not going to be able to afford to spend my time doing that because this is really important. Today, I have to go to practice of some sort. Today, I have to go to my internship, and I have to spend this many hours doing that particular task. So I already know that I've spent that money towards that, or that time towards that. So I'm going to have to do trade-offs. So what is going to have to give? So this is an example of somebody invites you to a party, somebody that you love, somebody that's important to you, says, I really would love for you to come and celebrate with me. But I only have 720 hours a month, 24 a day. So what a trade-off might look like is that you may say to that person, listen, I am not going to be able to join you at your celebration. However, I would love to be able to make my famous whatever dessert, dish, whatever for you to be a part of that event. That's an example of a trade-off. It is the opportunity for me to say, I recognize that something is really important. It's important to me, but I'm not able to do that. And so I offer an alternative for myself socially. And we need to do that in various environments. Is there an alternative? But it's really about giving us the chance to think about that, giving ourselves the opportunity to just stop and say, wait, I only have X number of hours. I'm not going to be able to do that because I may have to compromise in another area that I have not included in a while. I have not rested. I have not taken a look at my portfolio. I have not taken a look at what I'm supposed to be doing, spiritually. I haven't stopped, haven't meditated, haven't done any of those things. So I'm going to need to look at a trade-off. And like I said, the key there is including ourselves, because like I said, all too often, that is where our challenge comes in, is being self-inclusive. That's the first thing we like to let go. It'll be okay. I'm just going to go anyway. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there and I'm not engaged because I'm so busy thinking about what the other things that I need to be doing. So I'm not even able to enjoy the company that I wish I could. So you may say to that person, let's have lunch together some other time, my treat. But again, being able to engage trade-offs. And so really being able to do that is really important. I'd like to take a look at our health a little bit. Let me ask a question. What do you all think is the #1 cause of death for men and women? Any ideas? It's the #1 cause of death for men and women alike. Let's see here what we got. Yep. Heart attacks, heart disease, stress. Excellent. You are right. It is heart, and I put here dis-ease. And when I put your heart being at a dis-ease, meaning our heart is not at ease, this is the #1 cause of death for men and women. Literally, one person dies every 36 seconds in the United States from cardiovascular disease. Every 36 seconds, someone dies. This is something that we have to take seriously, because our brain and our heart are literally synonymous. It's like our heart is literally our second brain. It is truly the most emotionally responsive organ that we have in our body. Again, we use it to express emotions. It is the only organ, major organ, that we use to express emotions. We send heart emojis. We have Valentine's Day associated with this organ. It is an emotional center for us. It is literally our second brain. Actually, our heart responds a lot to emotions faster than our brains. It's something where we say, what, my heart, when you get scared, your heart rate increases. When you get nervous, your palms become sweaty and your heart races. Sometimes you're saying to somebody, you feel my heart, it's beating so fast. So our heart is very emotional and very emotionally responsive. But when we talk about heart disease, we talk about stress, and that our bodies actually translate stress and attack it as though it is an actual infection. That is the way our body actually attacks stress. That is the way stress impacts our body. And it's read by our body as some form of foreign body or some form of infection. And our body is trying to fight it off. Now, when we start talking about where our stress comes from, there is, as we all may be aware of, is cortisol. Now, cortisol is a hormone, a steroid hormone, commonly known as the stress hormone. This is where our fight, flight, or freeze response comes in. It is a primitive response system. Basically, it is designed simply to keep us alive. And by primitive, cortisol is designed to say, hey, there is a tiger. What happens with cortisol? Cortisol says, I need to save you right now. What cortisol starts to do is shut things off. You all of a sudden become laser focused. You can't see anything around you. You all of a sudden, you're not in the middle saying, oh, I'm really hungry, I'd like a burger. No, you have no hunger. Your body starts to shut down as far as feeling. That's where people say, I ran through a whole whatever of glass, didn't feel a thing. I lifted up a car, because now cortisol is sending all of those focuses, is saying to your body, hey, we're in danger. We need to save ourselves. So our body starts to pull from other areas so that we can survive. That is what cortisol is designed to do. It's designed for very specific life saving. The problem is that we are living as though we are being chased by a saber-toothed tiger while we're sitting at our desk. And so what's happening is our blood vessels are constricted. This is where you can sit all day long and forget that you've never gone to the bathroom. This is where you can sit all day long and say, have I eaten anything? It's because cortisol has shut that sensor off. It is where you are literally not feeling. You can't hear. Somebody will be calling your name. You're like, huh? Because you have shut that down. I didn't hear anything. Cortisol is overactive. And when cortisol becomes overactive, that is where our health starts to suffer. That is where we start to look at increased blood pressure, because again, the constriction is maintained. The increased blood sugar, because again, you need that blood sugar because we think you have to go. We think we have to save ourselves. So this is where that side effect of people, when we start talking about the type 2 diabetes coming into play. We start talking about our obesity. Again, our body is starting to preserve. Look, I can't get rid of calories. I might need them to save you. So I don't know what's going on. Why all of a sudden I'm picking up weight? Because you're under so much stress. Your body thinks that you are about to be killed. And so it is trying its best to fight off you being harmed. One of the other things is that our belly has the largest number of cortisol receptors. Now, we have the most stress hormone in our midsection. If you are finding yourself where you just, you know what, my pants are just a little bit tight, it may actually be that is increased levels of stress that you are holding in your stomach. You're holding in your abdomen area, because that is where the stress hormones have the most receptors. That's where they receive the most information, is in our belly. That is the largest receptor. So if you're having trouble with that midsection, it may actually be stress. Now, on the other side over here, we're taking a look at dopamine along with serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins. These are responsible for our happiness. This is responsible for our movement and our being able to pay attention and our learning and our emotional responses. So when we look back and we talked about successful people, we look over here and we say these hormones are very aligned with what we talked about with successful people. They're being able to pay attention, they're learning, they're emotional responsive. So when we start, so there's no coincidence, is what I'll say, that this is what it is. And so all of our pleasure sensors are related to these hormones. So let's talk about how some of the ways to combat increased cortisol levels, some simple ways. Eat more protein, because again, you are eating more protein, as we know all the different benefits of protein. Protein feeds our brain, it feeds our muscles. Less saturated fat. If we're holding cortisol in our bellies and we're having that increased saturated fat, we're going to be able to hold more of it. So we want to have less of that. Probiotics, again, it's gut health. If you are talking about that stress hormone and you have good gut health, you're keeping things moving. The same with water. Water is pushing things through your body. So yes, these would be considered physical health benefits, but they're also stress-related benefits. So drinking a lot of water pushes those things through you, cleanses your system. Exercising often, it tells your brain that, hey, we can be creative, we can think. Getting enough sleep, we all know this one. But again, giving your brain the opportunity to shut down is really important. Smile. This one is pretty interesting because literally, by simply smiling, it activates your brain and it reduces your stress level. And there's a trick that you can do if you don't feel like smiling, you're having a rough day. Get something clean, pencil, pen. What you do is you put that between your teeth and just bite down on it, and it actually activates the muscles in your face that are used to smile. And it will literally work to reduce your stress level automatically. So if somebody comes into your office and they see you with a pen in your mouth, just let them know, look, I'm stressed, I'm trying to work through it. And then we also know about meditating, quiet your mind, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Some quick things about hacks to releasing these different things. For dopamine, express gratitude. This is your reward motivational chemical. Express gratitude, just simply say, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for that, 3 to 5 things, and it will literally bring up more dopamine and decrease the cortisol. For oxytocin, this is the love chemical. Give yourself a nice big hug and literally say to yourself, I love you. And that will increase your oxytocin. Let's talk serotonin is for your mood. Make yourself laugh. Literally just fake it. Your brain does not know the difference. You can just sit back and belly laugh for a second, and it will release the serotonin. Endorphins. I hope you love it, but dark chocolate will literally release endorphins. Like I said, some of these things, it's like, I know these things, but again, am I doing them is the question that we have to answer. Let's talk about something that we talked about a little bit before, is our relaxation and meditation. Now, here is where not just what to do, but I wanted us to look at why we're doing it. So being in a relaxed or meditative state, this changes your brain wave from beta to alpha, which is actually a healing brainwave. So you're giving yourself, you're feeding your brain when you're taking that time to relax and meditate. It produces physiological changes. It increases your creativity and learning ability when you take the opportunity to just center your mind and to relax. And it enhances your immune system. So opposite of the stress, it deletes in your immune system. It basically says it kills stress and enhances your mental and emotional well-being. And I want to talk a little bit about deep breathing. If we also decide that we look at cortisol living most in our gut and in our bellies, one of the great things about deep breathing is that it doesn't take place in our chest, but it takes place in our stomach. And so we fill our bellies up with oxygen and you hold it, giving that oxygen an opportunity to work in that belly, and then you release those chemicals. So you want to take the opportunity to remember deep breathing isn't just for good measure, but it is literally for good health. This is going to help you physically as well as mentally. Oftentimes meditation is directly associated with our mental health, but it is also important for our physical health. And so it's so important that we take the opportunity to do that. All right. I think I have about a few more minutes, but I'm gonna skip that one. So I have really quickly, the next presentation, I want to talk about that a little bit before we move into questions answered, is develop your self-care plan for the holidays, which is November 14th. And that one is going to be done by Professor Donna Drucker from 12 to 1 p.m. on campus. So thank you all very much. And I just put up my references.
Thank you so much, Marie. Before we jump into questions, I just want everyone to take a quick moment to complete a brief survey about tonight's workshop. Oh, there, Kayla already dropped it in the chat for us. Your feedback helps us know what we're doing right and what kind of events you guys would like to see in the future for the Robin Rubin Center. Thank you all for your help. And if you have any questions for Marie, we can start that now. Any questions? Oh, questions in the chat. Okay, Catherine asks, what do you recommend for how to determine a baseline? You're muted, Marie. Oh no, we can't hear Marie. It's okay.
Hey, Danielle, maybe try to remove Marie as a co-host and then re-add her as one, and maybe that will reestablish those abilities to unmute.
Let me see. Okay, I removed her. Okay. Can you unmute now, Marie?
I can unmute. Why don't you just unmute everybody? Just unmute everybody.
Okay. Can
There
you
we
hear
go.
me?
Okay, there we go.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So the question was, I'm sorry, can you repeat? Was related to baseline?
Yes. What do you recommend for how to determine a baseline?
when we say baseline, are we talking about a baseline for balance or a baseline for imbalance? When you're saying what is?
I added a follow-up, Marie. So for the baseline for that pie chart of how we spent our time, how do you recommend we figure out what our pie looks like?
Oh, okay. So basically you just want to take a look and see, are you engaged in those particular areas? When I say, are you engaged? Take a look at each of those areas and say, do I have something in this area? Do I have something in this area? And whatever it is that you are either the lowest in or that isn't existent, that's where you want to increase, provide some additional focus, give some more of your time as relates to planning to be inclusive of those areas. So you want to take it from the perspective of, let me just do a self-assessment about each of those areas, and then be able to, based on that self-assessment, then determine how you want to be more inclusive of those particular areas that you're lacking. Because I promise you, we're all lacking in one or more of those areas, because one or more of those areas tend to get a lot of our focus, and the others are often things that we just say, I'm going to get to it, and they just don't. And we find ourselves going month after month, and we haven't done those things that we know are important, we know that we want to do, and we just haven't gotten to them. So being more inclusive is truly about those trade-offs and being able to say, wait a minute, I'm going to need to recognize that in order for me to be inclusive of these areas, I have to engage in trade-offs. And that's the big piece, is that balance really requires us to look at trade-offs.
Okay, next one. Jordan asks, can you tell us about a time you experienced stress?
Oh, Jordan. See, a time that I experienced stress. I'm going to go with something, because we can talk about, healthy stress and unhealthy stress. When we start talking about healthy, for me, is healthy stress is something that just kind of produces more, gives you the opportunity, it entices you, it makes you have more of a positive experience. But I think usually for me, if there's, I'm a party planner. I love, hosting people. Generally at our home, there's a minimum of 20 people to any event. So those types of things can be very stressful because I'm very meticulous and planning and those types of things. So I definitely have experienced stress related to that. And something that is more profound for me is the loss of both my mother. Was very stressful for me. So grief can be something that it causes a lot of stress, and that's situational stress. And it's one of those where with the situational stress and things of that nature is that you want to look at that, is that beyond the situation, am I still experiencing a level of grief and stress that is no longer able to be attached to something directly? It is something that is much more generalized. So that's when we start looking and moving into something that looks a little bit more like imbalance, and we need to kind of look at what we need to put in place in order to move the needle a bit.
Okay, and I think the last question from Carolina, how can we lessen our guilt for putting ourselves first? That's a good question.
Oh, I like it. So when we start talking about lessening your guilt, it's about really recognizing the importance of self-inclusion. Because if you are not willing to include yourself, you're also saying that things that you want to do are not important, because you are the center. As we look at that sphere, is the center is you. And if you're not going to be a part of that, then nothing is truly going to get done. So you have to look at yourself as a necessity. I am a necessary part in order for all these things that are important for me to get done. Because remember, the pull that we have is because of things that we're trying to do are valuable to us. So it's not a matter of this is going to be less valuable, this is going to be less valuable. They're all important. And then I have to be a part of that in order to do the things that I think is important.
There is one more question. What do you recommend as best probiotic?
I don't know. They usually say live cultures. So, a lot of times there's probiotic pills, and I'm not really sure about that, but I'm not really qualified to give the full answer. So I'm going to give a personal. I like yogurt. It's one of the things where you're able to kind of kill a couple birds, because if you get your nice Greek, you got the protein, you got the probiotics, so you kind of get a dual benefit from that. But that's a personal thing, so I'm not the professional to ask about it. But that's just my personal thing, is because they say life cultures are important, and a nice Greek yogurt gives you that protein that we talked about before, related to the reducing of the cortisol. So that would be my answer to that.
Thank you, Marie. I think those are all the questions in the chat. If anyone else has another question. I think that's it.
There's another one. Brittany
There's
Murray.
another one? Okay. How do you suggest handling stress relating to grief? This is from Brittany.
How do you suggest stress related to grief? First of all, recognizing that the stress associated with the grief process is normal. So just realizing that, hey, you have lost something, someone, a job, something that was valuable to you. So being stressed, we feel stress, associated with the loss of somebody's presence. Somebody you enjoy working with leaves and goes to another job. Someone leaves and goes away, moves away. We feel lost and we feel stress. Imagine if you start talking about a grief where you're somebody that's gone indefinitely. So of course you're going to experience the stress. So the first part I would say is just normalizing the fact that the way that I feel, the stress that I feel associated with this grief is normal. And so when we start talking about when answering a different question is, when do I need to look at that stress differently, is when the level of disruption, if it becomes something that's prolonged, disruptive to your functioning, then you want to be able to address that. But I also say that even in the early part where it's not necessarily disruptive, it's always okay to check in with yourself by getting with a professional. And sometimes it's just that I'm just going to go in and do a few sessions to check in. And you just sit down with somebody else as a check-in. Hey, this is what's happening. This is how I'm feeling. I'm just checking on myself. The same as you would check on a friend that was experiencing grief. It's okay to do that same thing for you. So don't be afraid to get counseling, if nothing else, just to check in on yourself.
Okay. Does anyone else have one last question? Okay, if there aren't any more questions, we are at the end of this road. I want to thank you, Marie, for being with us today and teaching us all something new, as well as giving us tools so we can start using them the right way to create more balance in our lives. To everyone in the audience, thank you for spending part of your evening with us. I hope you will join us again, like Marie said, on November 14th, when we'll create our personal action plans for self-care through the holiday season and beyond. You can register at u.edu/happiness. And while you're there, remember to register for the Friday meditation at noon on Zoom. Robin, would you like to say anything?